Hey everyone, welcome back. Took Winchester for a walk with the video process. Because Zoom has to do some stuff before I can hop back into the next one and go to the next Zoom meeting and Zoom recording. Um, there we go. That's what I needed. Okay. I hopefully I can get to 40 minutes. This might be kind of short. Maybe we'll finish. But let's jump back into it. So part four of Plato's Apology. This is our access to Socrates, the philosopher, who never wrote anything down. So Socrates is defending the philosophical life against charge of death, and he will get killed. But yeah, working through the new charges right now, corrupting the youth, the young, the youth, and believing in different gods in the city. So, and in particular, Socrates is explaining why it's more valuable and more important to pursue a just course of action rather than a life-preserving course of action. Justice is more important than survival, and wickedness is harder to outrun than death. He'll say that further down. And he's using examples of a time that they wanted to imprison 10 general or kill, I think. They were trying 10 generals who, after a battle, naval battle, didn't go rescue survivors as they properly should have. And the reason Socrates voted against it is because he understood that the generals would have put themselves in harm's way, and it wasn't fair to them to hold them to such a high standard. But I think he's about to say that further down. All right. This happened when the city was still a democracy. When the oligarchy was established, the 30 summoned me to the hall, along with four others, and ordered us to bring Leon from Salamis, probably not Salamis, Salamis, maybe, that he might be executed. They gave many such orders to many people in order to implicate as many as possible in their guilt. So whatever the government is doing, whatever the law is doing, is not necessarily the right thing. Then I showed again, not in words, but in action, that if it were not rather vulgar to say so, death is something I couldn't care less about, but that my whole concern is not to do anything unjust or impious. That government, powerful as it was, did not frighten me into any wrongdoing. When we left the hall, the other four went to Salamis and brought in Leon, but I went home. I might have been put to death for this had not the government fallen shortly afterwards. There are many who will witness to these events. Um, it's in the footnotes that he says that. Um, a violent storm, this is the translator, not Socrates. It's in the footnotes of the information about why it was too high of a standard to expect the generals to go rescue these survivors, is not from Socrates in the footnotes. Violent storm prevented the Athenian generals from rescuing their survivors. For this, they were tried in Athens and sentenced to death by the assembly. Um, 6 generals were executed, the ones that were already in town, and the Athenians won. So they weren't at risk from other ships. It was just the storm itself. But anyway, do you think I would have survived all these years if I were engaged in public affairs and acting as a good man must, came to the help of justice and considered this the most important thing? Far from it, men of Athens, nor would any other man who would have been killed much earlier. Throughout my life and any public activity I may have engaged in, I am the same man as I am in private life. I have never come to an agreement with anyone to act unjustly, neither with anyone else nor with any one of those who they slanderously say are my pupils. I have never been anyone's teacher. If anyone, young or old, desires to listen to me when I am talking and dealing with my own concerns, I have never begrudged this to anyone, but I do not converse when I receive a fee and not when I do not. I am equally ready to question the rich and the poor if anyone is willing to answer my questions and listen to what I say. And I cannot justly be held responsible for the good or bad conduct of these people, as I never promised to teach them anything and have not done so. If anyone says that he has learned anything from me, or that he learned anything privately that the others did not hear, be assured that he is not telling the truth. Why then do some people enjoy spending considerable time in my company? As we said before, the youth enjoy seeing arrogance knocked down a peg. You have heard why, men of Athens, I have told you the whole truth. They enjoy hearing those being questioned, who think they are wise but are not. And this is not unpleasant. To do this has, as I say, been enjoined upon me by the god, by means of oracles and dreams. So when he says unpleasant, he means like socially disagreeable or morally inappropriate, like where morals are about social niceties more so than universal ethics. And in every way that a divine manifestation has ever ordered a man to do anything. So Socrates is saying it's, in fact, quite um, ethically imperative that he does this. This is true, gentlemen, and can easily be established. If I corrupt some young men and have corrupted others, then surely some of them who have grown older and realize that I gave them bad advice when they were young should now themselves come up here to accuse me and avenge themselves. If they were unwilling to do so themselves, then some of their kindred, their fathers or brothers or other relations should recall it now if their family had been harmed by me. I see many of these present here. First Crito, my contemporary and fellow Demisman, the father of Critobulus here. Next, Licinius of Sphetus, father of Aeschines here. Also Antiphone, the Suffisian, father of Epigenes, and others whose brothers spent their time in this way. Nicostratus, the son of Theozotides, sorry, brother of Theodotus, and Theodotus has died, so we could not influence him. Paralyus here, son of Demodocus, whose brother was Theages. There is Adamantus, son of Ariston, brother of Plato here. So this one will reappear in the Apology. Not, sorry, the Republic. Adamantus is I may have inappropriately previously said, or incorrectly previously said, that Adamantus was the obstinate figure. Um, I think I guess Glaucon and Adamantus were together with Socrates, and they all three of them were the ones that were taken away by Telemachus or Prolomachus. I think it's Prolomachus. Sorry, I need to pull it up now because I can't let the inaccuracy stand in a moment, and I can just check real quick. Um, Polemarchus, not Polemachus, Polemarchus. Yeah, Adamantus. This translation doesn't have like it's not written dramatically. It's all told in the layer of Socrates. I went down to the Piraeus yesterday, so it's all a long monologue actually. And that's something we should think about when we read it. But Aeontodorus, brother of Apollodorus here. Sorry, reading all those Greek names was a little painful. I'm not versed in that. I could mention many others, and I don't like even in like the Bible, I would skip the genealogies. I don't can't remember that information. Some one of whom surely Meletus should have brought in as witness in his own speech. If he forgot to do so, like someone, the one being the person who could say that Socrates deliberately harmed them with what happened to them what happened to them by associating with Socrates. Um, but Meletus didn't do that because that person doesn't exist. If he forgot to do so, then let him do it now. I will yield time if he has anything of the kind to say, if he can furnish this evidence against me. And so Socrates is trying to say, because he doesn't have this evidence, it should be clear that I'm not at fault here. Oh, coffee. You will find quite the contrary, gentlemen. These men are all ready to come to the help of the corrupter, the man who has harmed their kindred, as Meletus and Anytus say. Now, those who are corrupted might well have reason to help me, but the uncorrupted, their kindred who are older than me, who are older men, have no reason to help me except the right and proper one. They know that Meletus is lying and that I'm telling the truth. So if he did mess with his students, maybe they're not of sound mind, and they were in a state where they could no longer attest to the fact that they wouldn't want this to happen to them. But family members who have not been influenced by Socrates should be able to attest to this and say, hey, look, these guys are not the children I grew up with. They're not the kind of people that I know. Um, and that doesn't happen either because Socrates didn't do any such thing. Uh, so they don't come forth. And the reason they don't come forth is because it's honest. There is no evidence. Very well, and that I am telling the truth. Very well, gentlemen, this and maybe other similar things is what I have to say in my defense. Perhaps one of you might be angry, as he recalls that when he himself stood trial on a less dangerous charge, he begged and implored the jurymen with many tears that he brought his children and many of his friends and family into a court to arouse as much pity as he could, but that I do none of these things, even though I may seem to be running the ultimate risk. Thinking of this, he might feel resentful towards me and angry about this, cast his vote in anger. If there is such a one among you, I do not deem there is, but if there is, I do not deem there is, so he's not accusing or claiming or perceiving. I think it would be right to say in reply, my good sir, I too have a household, and in Homer's phrase, I am not born from oak or rock, I have a family, came from parents, but from men, so that I have a family, indeed three sons, men of Athens, of whom one is an adolescent, while two are children. So even in his 70s, his children are 5 to 15 years old. Maybe the adolescent means 25, but probably 15. Um, I think like Glaucon, Plato, and Adeimantus are all in their 20s. Nevertheless, I will not beg you to acquit me with bringing them here. Why do I do none of these things? Not through arrogance, gentlemen, nor through lack of respect for you. Whether I am brave in the face of death is another matter, but with regard to my reputation and yours and that of the whole city, it does not seem right to me to do these things, especially at my age and with my reputation. For it is generally believed, whether it be true or false, that in certain respects Socrates is superior to the majority of men. Now, if those of you who are considered superior, be it in wisdom or courage or whatever other virtue makes them so, whatever other excellence, arete makes them so, are seen behaving like that, it would be a disgrace. Yet I have often seen them do this sort of thing in standing trial. Men who are thought to be somebody doing amazing things as if they thought it a terrible thing to die, and as if they were to be immortal if you did not execute them. I think these men bring shame upon the city, so that a stranger too would assume that those who are outstanding in virtue among the Athenians, whom they themselves select from themselves to fill offices of state and receive other honors, are in no way better than women. So there's some sexism in here. I forgot about that. I'm sorry that I should have mentioned that sooner. It shouldn't be the kind of thing that I forget about. Um, Plato doesn't have this. Like I said, Plato actually explicitly mentions a philosopher queen. But there is also a sort of anti-feminist prejudice, like we saw with Bergson. Um, I'm not a gender essentialist, so I don't want to say that like static and objective things are masculine and immutable, and fluid and emotional things are feminine. Um, Christopher, for one, kind of has this with the symbolic and the semiotic. And there's a history in the tradition of philosophy between like Bergson and Plato, where Plato is immutable and Bergson is fluid. Um, so it's like a historically constructed gender essentialism that we want to diffuse and allow any human to be any way. Um, and I say that because I think that in Plato, when he says that a philosopher queen or queen, he says that it could be any person as long as they have these traits. Well, even that set of traits, um, can be hierarchical and exclusionary and tend towards what men force themselves to be historically, which is like this like strong, stable thing. I don't know. It's not, I don't think it's healthy for anybody to hold on to these terms and definitions and structures and categories. Um, you should not act like that, men of Athens, those of you who have any reputation at all. And if we do, you should not allow it. You should make it very clear that you will more readily convict a man who performs these pitiful dramatics in court and so makes the city a laughingstock than a man who keeps quiet. Quite apart from the question of reputation, gentlemen, I do not think it right to supplicate the jury and to be acquitted because of this, but to teach and persuade them. It is not the purpose of a juryman's office to give justice as a favor to whoever seems good to him, but to judge according to law, and this he has sworn to do. We should not accustom you to perjure yourselves, nor should you make a habit of it. This is irreverent conduct for either of us. Do not deem it right for me, men of Athens, that I should act towards you in a way that I do not consider to be good or just or pious, especially by Zeus, as I am being prosecuted by Meletus here for impiety. Clearly, if I convinced you by my supplication uh, to and appealing to like family and friends and emotions, I say emotions, I don't mean intuitions, I mean impulses, fleeting impulses. Um, To do violence to your oath of office, I would be teaching you not to believe that there are gods. And my defense would convict me of not believing in them. So he'd be incriminating himself for the very thing that they accuse him of. This is far from being the case, gentlemen, for I do believe in them, as none of my accusers do. I leave it to you and the God to judge me in the way that will be best for me and for you. The jury now gives its verdict of guilty, and Meletus asks for the penalty of death. This is the first break. So the thirds aren't actually thirds. You can see that we've gone through uh, three-fourths of the text, four-fifths of the text before getting to the next third, um, next section, the second section. There are many other reasons for my not being angry with you for convicting me, men of Athens, and what happened was not unexpected. I am much more surprised at the number of votes cast on each side, for I did not think the decision would be by so few votes, but by a great many. As it is, a switch of only 30 votes would have acquitted me. I think myself that I have been cleared of Meletus's charges. And not only this, but it is clear to all that if Anytus and Lycon had not joined him in accusing me, he would have been fined 1,000 drachmas for not receiving a fifth of the votes. He assesses the penalty of death. So be it. There's a joke in here, in my opinion. What counter-assessment should I propose to you, men of Athens? Clearly, it should be a penalty I deserve. And what do I deserve to suffer or to pay because I have deliberately not led a quiet life, but have neglected what occupies most people, wealth, household affairs, the position of general or public orator, or the other offices, the political clubs and factions that exist in the city? I thought myself too honest to survive if I occupied myself with those things. I did not follow that path that would have made me of no use either to you or to myself, but I went to each of you privately and conferred upon him what I say is the greatest benefit, by trying to persuade him not to care for any of his belongings before caring that he himself should be as good and as wise as possible, not to care for the city's possessions more than for the city itself, and to care for other things in the same way. What do I deserve for being such a man? Some good, men of Athens, if I must truly make an assessment according to my deserts, and something suitable. What is suitable for a poor benefactor who needs leisure to exhort you? Nothing is more suitable, gentlemen, than for such a man to be fed in the Prytaneum, where the Olympic victors celebrate. Much more suitable for him than for any one of you who has won a victory at Olympia, with a pair or a team of horses. The Olympian victor makes you think yourself happy. I make you be happy. So perceive versus being, right? We talked about the soul versus the value produced by the activity, the material capital, the object versus the labor, the process, and the person, the whole being, the impulsive being who can accomplish that labor versus behaviorism or the method or the practice or the techne involved. There is still a practice involved. You do have to engage with the world, but you can't, you have to find the impulse, not the step-by-step procedure. It's not proceduralism. Besides, he does not need food, but I do because of his poverty. So if I must make a just assessment of what I deserve, I assess it as this: free meals in the Prytaneum. That's what I think is right, but it's funny. When I say this, you may think, as when I spoke of appeals to piety and entreaties, that I speak arrogantly, but that is not the case, men of Athens. Rather, it is like this: I am convinced that I never willingly wrong anyone. But I am not convincing you of this, for we have talked together for but a short time. If it were the law with us, as it is elsewhere, that a trial for life should not last one but many days, you would be convinced. But now it is not easy to dispel great slanders in a short time. Since I am convinced that I wrong no one, I am not likely to wrong myself, to say that I deserve some evil, and to make some such assessment against myself. What should I fear? That I should suffer the penalty Meletus has assessed against me, of which I say I do not know whether it is good or bad, death, and I then to choose in preference, am I then to choose in preference to the something that I know very well to be an evil and assess the penalty at that? Imprisonment? Why should I live in prison, always subjected to the ruling magistrates, the 11? A fine? An imprisonment until I pay it? That would be the same thing for me, as I have no money. Exile, for perhaps you might accept that assessment. This is also very funny to me. I should have to be inordinately fond of life, extravagantly above the average weigh in, um, fond of life, men of Athens, to be so unreasonable, arrogant, as to suppose that other men will easily tolerate my company and conversation when you, my fellow citizens, have been unable to endure them, but found them a burden and resented them so that you are now seeking to get rid of them. He says, if you want me to go practice, you exile me, you want me to go do philosophy somewhere else. I'm not so arrogant to think that some other culture that doesn't understand me or didn't raise me, um, doesn't speak my language, so to speak, isn't fluent in my ways of being, my habits, my norms. Not so arrogant to think they're going to be more likely to tolerate me. Far from it, gentlemen. It would be a fine life at my age to be driven out of one city after another, for I know very well that wherever I go, the young men will listen to my talk as they do here. If I drive them away, they will themselves persuade their elders to drive me out. If I do not drive them away, their fathers and relations will drive me out on their behalf. So you piss the kids off, and they don't want you. You can get the kids to love you, and then the other adults who don't really love the kids and aren't really interested in bettering them drive you out. I mean, the philosopher is screwed. So why are we so happy about it? Because that's the power of the justice of the soul, the certitude of the commitment to virtue and excellence. Perhaps someone might say, but Socrates, if you leave us, will you not be able to live quietly without talking? Now, this is the most difficult point on which to convince some of you. If I say that it is impossible for me to keep quiet because that means disobeying the God, you will not believe me and will think that I'm being ironical because I don't believe in a God, or they think he doesn't believe in a God. On the other hand, if I say that it is the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue every day, and those other things about which you hear me conversing and testing myself and others, for the unexamined life is not worth living for men, you will believe me even less. And this is why the dialogues are just meant to be read over and over again, taught over and over again, discussed over and over again, and philosophy in general, from semester to semester, from friend to friend, from conversation to conversation, from life to life. It's just the best way to spend your time. What I say is true, gentlemen, but it is not easy to convince you. At the same time, I am not accustomed to think that I deserve any penalty. If I had money, I would assess the penalty at the amount I could pay, for that would not hurt me, but I have none unless you are willing to set the penalty at the amount I can pay, and perhaps I could pay you 1 mina of silver. So that is my assessment. Plato here, men of Athens, and Crito and Critobulus and Apollodorus bid me put the penalty at 30 minas, and they will stand surety for the money, so they'll pay 30 minas. Well, then, that is my assessment, and they will be sufficient guarantee of payment. The jury now votes again and sentences Socrates to death. It is for the sake of a short time, men of Athens, that you will acquire the reputation and the guilt in the eyes of those who want to denigrate the city of having killed Socrates, a wise man. For they who want to revile you will say that I am wise even if I am not. If you had waited but a little while, this would have happened of its own accord. You see my age, that I am already advanced in years and close to death. So another joke, you could have just waited. I was going to die in a few years anyway. I'm pretty old. I am saying this not to all of you, but to those who condemned me to death. So he's speaking to both the ones who condemned him and the ones who did not. Um, and to those same ones I say, perhaps you think that I was convicted for lack of such words as might have convinced you, if I thought I should say or do all I could to avoid my sentence. So he says, I could have manipulated you. I chose to preserve the well-being of my soul instead. Far from it. I was convicted because I lacked not words, but boldness and shamelessness, and the willingness to say to you what you would most gladly have heard from me. Lamentations and tears, and my saying and doing many things that I say are unworthy of me, but that you are accustomed to hear from others. Subservience and a lack of self-respect, a lack of commitment and excellence and knowledge of one's own virtue. I did not think then that the danger I ran should make me do anything mean, nor do I now regret the nature of my defense. I would much rather die after this kind of defense than live after making the other kind. Neither I nor any other man should, on trial or in war, contrive to avoid death at any cost. Indeed, it is often obvious in battle that one could escape death by throwing away one's weapons and by turning to supplicate one's pursuers. There are many ways to avoid death in every kind of danger if one will venture to do or say anything to avoid it. It is not difficult to avoid death, gentlemen. It is much more difficult to avoid wickedness, for it runs faster than death. It is harder to outrun wickedness than death. Slow and elderly as I am, I have been caught by the slower pursuer, whereas my accusers, being clever and sharp, have been caught by the quicker wickedness. I leave you now condemned to death by you, but they are condemned by truth to wickedness and injustice. So I maintain my assessment, and they maintain theirs. This perhaps had to happen, and I think it is as it should be. Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry, I just didn't want to scratch my nose on camera because it's gross, and I try to have manners. Um, Now I want to prophesy to those who convicted me, for I am at the point when men prophesy most when they are about to die. I say, gentlemen, to those who voted to kill me, that vengeance will come upon you immediately after my death, a vengeance much harder to bear than that which you took in killing me. You did this in the belief that you would avoid giving an account of your life, but I maintain that quite the opposite will happen to you. There will be more people to test you whom I now held back, but you did not notice it. They will be more difficult to deal with as they will be younger and you will resent them more. You are wrong if you believe that by killing people you will prevent anyone from reproaching you for not living in the right way. To escape such tests is neither possible nor good, but it is best and easiest not to discredit others, but to prepare oneself to be as good as possible. With this prophecy to you who convicted me, I part from you. I should be glad to discuss what has happened with those who voted for my acquittal during the time that the officers of the court are busy, and I do not yet have to depart to my death. So, gentlemen, stay with me a while, for nothing prevents us from talking to each other while it is allowed. To you, as being my friends, I want to show the meaning of what has occurred. A surprising thing has happened to me, jurymen. You, I would rightly call jurymen, the ones who voted to acquit him. At all previous times, my familiar prophetic power, my spiritual, this is where he talks about the divine sign that lets him know that he's doing the right thing. My spiritual manifestation frequently, in the voice of the gods from the Oracle at Delphi too, frequently opposed me even in small matters when I was about to do something wrong. But now that, as you can see for yourselves, I was faced with what one might think and what is generally thought to be the worst of evils, my divine sign has not opposed me, either when I left home at dawn, or when I came into court, or at any time that I was about to say something during my speech. Yet in other talks, it often held me back in the middle of my speaking, but now it has opposed no word or deed of mine. What do I think is the reason for this? I will tell you. What has happened to me may well be a good thing, and those of us who believe death to be an evil are certainly mistaken. I have convincing proof of this, for it is impossible that my familiar sign did not oppose me if I was not about to do what was right. So, really quickly here, there's a negative methodology to this divine sign that we need to emphasize. Um, it does not tell Socrates what to do positively, it tells him what not to do. So, and right here he's saying, it did not tell me not to do something. So the fact that I didn't get any warning signs or like red flags or like intuitive like fear or um yeah, intuition telling you to be alert, because none of that happened, he can trust his course of action. That's what he says. He's not saying that he knew that he was supposed to do these things or that he necessarily felt a confidence. That confidence comes from the excellence of soul, the virtue itself. But there's a sort of cracking, breaking intuition that contradicts his course of action and tells him not to do things that he did not feel. Let us reflect in this way too, that there is good hope that death is a blessing. For it is one of two things: either the dead are nothing and have no perception of anything, or it is, as we are told, a change and a relocating for the soul from here to another place. This follows with most world religions too. If it is complete lack of perception, like a dreamless sleep, then death would be a great advantage. For I think that if one had to pick out that night during which a man slept soundly and did not dream, put beside it the other nights and days of his life, and then see how many days and nights have been better and more pleasant than that night, not only a private person, but the great king would find them easy to count compared with the other days and nights. If death is like this, I say it is an advantage, for all eternity would then seem to be no more than a single night. So there's an instantaneity to it, which is harmless. If, on the other hand, death is a change from here to another place, and what we are told is true, and all who have died are there, what greater blessing could there be, gentlemen of the jury, if anyone arriving in Hades would have escaped from those who call themselves jurymen here, and will find those true jurymen who are said to sit in judgment there? Minos and Rhadamanthus and Aeacus and Triptolemus and the other demigods who have been upright in their own life, would that be a poor kind of exchange? So we get to talk to other philosophers, other great heroes or excellent people. I call this hanging out with heroes. That's what the whiteboards and notes say. Again, what would one of you give to keep company with Orpheus and Musaeus, Hesiod and Homer? I am willing to die many times if that is true. It would be a wonderful way for me to spend my time whenever I met Palamedes and Ajax, the son of Telamon, and any other of the men of old who died through an unjust conviction, to compare my experience with theirs. I think it would be pleasant to do so. Most important, I could spend my time testing and examining people there, as I do here, as to who among them is wise and who thinks he is but is not. But what would one not give, gentlemen of the jury, for the opportunity to examine the man who led the great expedition against Troy, or Odysseus, or Sisyphus, and innumerable other men and women one could mention? So here he does mention women that could be, I don't know, it goes against the sexism earlier. It would be an extraordinary happiness to talk with them, to keep company with them and examine them. In any case, they would certainly not put one to death for doing so. They are happier there than when we are here in other respects, and for the rest of time they are deathless, if indeed what we are told is true. You too must be of good hope as regards death, gentlemen of the jury, and keep this one truth in mind, that a good man cannot be harmed either in life or in death, and that his affairs are not neglected by the gods. What has happened to me now has not happened of itself, but it is clear to me that it was better for me to die now and to escape from trouble. That is why my divine sign does not oppose me at any point. So I am certainly not angry with those who have convicted me, or with my accusers. Of course, that was not their purpose when they accused and convicted me, but they thought they were hurting me, and for this they deserve blame. This much I ask from them. When my sons grow up, avenge yourselves by causing them the same kind of grief that I caused you. If you think they care for money or anything else more than they care for virtue, or if they think they are somebody when they are nobody, reproach them as I reproach you, that they do not care for the right things and think they are worthy when they are not worthy of anything. If you do this, I shall have been justly treated by you, and my sons also. Now the hour to part has come. I go to die, you go to live. Which of us goes to the better lot is known to no one except the God.